Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of the AutoGuide Show. We are the editors of AutoGuide.com and its family of sister sites, which is a lot. And this week we're going to be talking about 3 sports cars and 1 crossover, which is nice because usually it's the other way around. So we have the 911 Carrera T, we have the Ford Mustang Bullitt, we have the new Mazda Miata, and finally the Jeep Cherokee. So a new episode drops every other Friday on YouTube or your favorite podcast player, and make sure to subscribe and review it so you never miss an episode. Sami, what are we going to start with?
We're going to start with the audience questions this week. And you know what? Like you said, people rate and review the podcast. Even on YouTube, we see all those comments, and they mean something to us. So
the nice ones do.
Well, yeah. I mean, the mean ones mean something too, but just not in the same way. This week we've got John Appleseed, who asked us on YouTube, what cars do you drive, and what do you use to commute to work? Yeah, Sebastien, cover your face. This one's right for you.
This is the look of a guy who feels ashamed by what he drives.
Right.
It's not shame, it's pain. My car broke down this week, guys. It's not good. This weekend, I was stuck in traffic on a highway, and there was a cloud of smoke ahead of me, and I thought, somebody's car just broke down. And fun fact, it was me. I was the idiot whose car had just broken down.
And which one is that?
That's the 2001 yellow Beetle that my mom gave me when I moved out of the house. It's the car that I learned to drive on, and it's the car that I drove across country in. And so you can imagine there's a bit of sadness involved.
It's lived a tough life.
It's lived a tough life. Yeah, exactly. It taught a bunch of people how to drive stick. So I'm surprised it still has a clutch.
I always said this, I've said this to Jodi, and I think when you teach somebody how to drive in your own personal car, especially how to drive stick, you earn like extra living time in that car. It's gained like karma.
It's good karma.
Cosmic karma.
Yeah.
That'll make it survive longer. And I don't know if your Beetle has lived a life longer than it should have.
It's got 330,000 kilometers on it. It doesn't owe me anything, but I can say this week that I am the proud owner of 3 vehicles that do not work, none of which are currently drivable. I've got a gas leak in my truck, I've got an R7 that has never been on the road, and I've got a Beetle that's now overheating.
Aww.
Oh no, so now all you have left is your bicycle.
It's the bicycle for me.
Aww. Well, I guess your Beetle will be coming back soon, right?
Yep.
Is it a tough fix?
Can confirm it's going to be back on the road. Actually, it's not too bad. It's a $45 part, and it's going back on, so.
It'll keep trucking on.
It'll keep trucking.
That's good news.
What do you drive?
I also have a Volkswagen. It's a 2008 Volkswagen Rabbit, which is just a Mark V Golf.
Right.
So in Canada, they called it the Rabbit because they sold the Mark IV Golf alongside it simultaneously, but they called it the City Golf, which was like a decontented, kind of stripped out version. And so I have a Rabbit, and it was the only generation that they called the Rabbit here.
Cool. I've been in your car. It's actually pretty well equipped. I think I like its packaging.
It's not bad. I have the hipster level of cylinders, which is 5 cylinders in my car, which is awesome, but it's a pig on gas. But I'm so happy with how reliable it's been.
It hasn't broke down on you?
No, nothing bad or weird has happened. I've also taught a whole bunch of people how to drive stick on it, so I'm getting my karma back.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Pretty happy with it.
And I drive a newer car. I drive a 2013 Scion FRS. Scion is no longer around anymore, and we just celebrated 8.6 Day, and I guess that car counts. Manual, just like yours, and I haven't taught a lot of people how to drive stick on it, but I have let a number of people drive my car because a lot of people don't know what to think of an 86 or an FRS or a B or Z until they get in it and experience it themselves. And I know I have a lot of my friends who take a look at it and said, like, is it really that much fun to drive with just 200 horsepower? And no, I've actually sold a couple of these things. My friends have definitely enjoyed it enough to buy one of their own, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
So,
actually, tell me the story of why you decided to buy it, because I love the story.
Why I decided to buy it? I was actually considering buying a Veloster, just a normal Veloster, the naturally aspirated one. And I thought that was a good value. It was really funky looking, it was very practical, and it was great on gas. And the turbo one was coming a little bit later, and I couldn't wait that long, so I needed to get a car. And I ended up driving the FRS at an autocross and a track day, and as soon as I did that, no other car felt the same. And that was really important for me. It was a car that felt unlike any other new car out there. It has real steering feel. The car feels really tight. It feels like it's built around the driver. And there's some practical elements too. Like, I love the folding rear seats. and I don't know, I just find it just the perfect fit for me. I'll also add that I remember when all of the hype was coming up to the FRS, and it took forever to show up in production form. And I remember for like...
Kind of like the Supra.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. I remember for almost like 2 years hearing about this car. I think they were calling the FT86 at the time. And I remember talking to one of our colleagues at the time, Stephen Elmer, and he was always, every day he was writing a news story about the new FT86 is coming, it's going to cost this much, it's going to weigh this much. And I eventually like, it should have been here by now. There's no way it's taking this long. I think this car is going to be vaporware. And so as a result, I had far more like curiosity because of this, because I had written it off before even driving it, and then when I drove it, I was pretty much convinced.
Cool. Well, thank you. I love that story. And thank you, John Appleseed, for your question. If you have more questions, email us at tips@AutoGuide.com. Otherwise, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and then we'll try to answer them on the next episode. And so I think we're going to move on and talk about a little bit of news. I think one of the biggest news pieces that came out in this last week was that specs for the Porsche Taycan.
Is that how you pronounce it properly?
I actually don't know.
Taycan. Taycan sounds like a Liam Neeson movie, though. So
yes, I will find you.
I will.
And I will drive you.
It has a special set of skills, yeah.
So I think it's supposed to be Taycan, although no one's going to say Porsche Taycan.
I kind of liked the project name, which was Mission E. I thought that was kind of cool, but
they should have just stuck with that.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't fit in with the rest of their car nomenclature in some way or another.
We were thinking of another pepper we could name it after, because they have Cayennes. We were like, maybe the Porsche Habanero.
Jalapeno.
But anyway, they kind of released some specs about it, so it's not in production yet, and it will go into production early 2019.
Okay.
And they revealed that this all-new electric car, it'll be Porsche's first fully electric car to compete with Tesla's. People are already calling it like the Tesla killer. So they're saying it'll have over 600 horsepower, 0 to 62 in under 3.5 seconds.
Okay.
And that it will have about 310 miles of driving range.
Okay, that's a lot of specs that are important to bring up in context for a Tesla, especially a Model S. I think what do they call it? A P100D.
Right.
So a P100D has about 760 horsepower, I think, when you have it fully loaded up.
With ludicrous mode or whatever.
And then the 0 to 60 time in that mode is 2.7 seconds, which is wild.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
However, the range of this thing is pretty good. 310 miles. I believe Teslas can do about 335, so it's not far off there. Mm-hmm. And I think they're doing some pretty impressive things. Porsche can really keep up with that. It'll be important to see how much this thing costs. And this new charging system is going to be pretty impressive too. Now they say it will take 5 minutes to charge 248 miles, which is pretty good. But they need to build a network just like Tesla did with the supercharger.
Well,
I think they're already coming out.
They've already started building the network in Germany, possibly Europe. And yeah, but I mean, its figures are smaller in each of these. Like the 0 to 60 is slower, it's got less horsepower. Like, is it too little too late for Porsche? Because shouldn't they have beaten Tesla by now?
But
I don't think so.
The way I think about it is like, I don't know if Porsche will debut their best, most amazing vehicle right from the get-go. They're going to, and we've seen this with a number of their cars. In fact, one of the cars that a couple of the cars we're going to talk about later today are just a normal car, and then later on a better version showed up, and Tesla knows how to make money. Porsche knows how to make some money. Yeah. They're going to show the normal one, and then they're going to charge a premium for a special one in a year or two later. That's what they usually do.
Well, and they also have their production pretty much set. Like, they know how to make cars, which is something Tesla doesn't. So, like, when Porsche says that they're going to crank out 20K of these Taycans a year, I'm almost positive they can hit that without any hiccups.
Without having to do it under a tent.
Exactly.
Yeah. What I'm looking forward to is this vehicle. I don't think it'll share much with other Volkswagen Auto Group members, is it?
So this one specifically, I think, is on a unique chassis.
Right. What about the powertrain? Do you know anything about that?
The chassis will eventually be shared between Audi and Porsche. Okay. They're taking on sports cars together. Okay. I'm not 100% sure if the Taycan is part of that, because I know that the e-trons are a unique platform as well. So that's something that's going to come in later.
Something that I think is really important when it comes to Porsche, and especially in this conversation with Tesla, is build quality and reliability. And I know a lot of people will probably comment on the cost of maintenance and reliability. I mean, maintenance and servicing a Porsche. But for most owners who upkeep their Porsches, they end up having pretty reliable vehicles, with the exception of those. Remember those Caymans that and 911s that had that engine issue,
or 918 that you can't turn too hard.
Right.
But this would be good for that because there's one moving
that caught fire.
Yeah, there are a couple. They've had a couple of production problems, but this will be good for that because there's only one moving part, right? So an electric car is great because you don't have to take it to the shop to get its oil changed because you don't have to have the engine dropped out because there is no engine.
Right.
So,
and they have everything else settled, right? Like the panel gaps will be nice and tight. Like everything will be exactly what you expect from a Porsche.
Or any German automaker.
Exactly. And so I'm excited for it. I think it'll be great.
I can't wait to see what they come. I think the most important thing we've got to look into what the price of this vehicle will be like, if it'll be competitive with the Model S's or other electric vehicles. There's also another one that's gaining popularity, the Jaguar I-Pace. I think it's going to be, I mean, it doesn't compete with the sedans. It's more like I think a Model X competitor. But it'll be interesting to see how they do in terms of sales of that too. Electric cars are really interesting. I'm excited to see these 600 plus horsepower electric cars hit the road.
It'll be really cool. But do you think the Porsche faithful will be accepting of an electric car?
I don't think they care. They weren't accepting of the Cayenne when it came out.
And now
they're buying the bejesus out of them. And so like when this comes around, I think they'll be fine. I think they want this because I guess there would be a lot of people who have large garages and they're big Porsche fans. They're like, hey, I just want an electric car. I don't want to buy a Tesla.
Sure.
And they're going to flock to this new Taycan.
That looks pretty good too.
And it has a lot more cachet than saying, I have a Tesla. Because people won't roll their eyes at you anymore. So if you say, I have a Porsche and it's electric, people are going to be like...
And nobody will roll your eyes at that? I still think some people will.
I wouldn't.
Well, if it's a Porsche and not a 911, you know...
I don't think people care. If it was up to me, I wouldn't buy a 911 anyway. I'd buy a Cayman.
Cayman all day.
Yeah. Speaking of...
Except for the car that I drove. I drove the 911 Carrera T for a week. This is a really weird car. I don't know how to describe it more than that. This is the lightest 911 you can get. Lightest. It weighs 3,142 pounds, which is about 100 pounds heavier than that Boxster GTS I drove a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, okay.
But that one was with a PDK, a dual clutch. This one was a manual. It also isn't the most powerful 911 you can get. It makes 370 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque, which is on par with the base Carrera. But there's a couple of really neat enthusiast-oriented features in this car. It comes with the standard limited-slip rear differential. It comes with the sport suspension, which lowers it about 10 millimeters. And it has available rear-wheel steering, which is what my car had. It also has a lower final gear ratio. And additionally, it has that sweet rev-matching manual system, which is awesome. It cost $103,000.
With a manual.
With a manual, yes. Which is wild to think you can spend that much money and still have a car that changes gears for yourself.
That, though.
It's also that weird 7-speed manual which takes some practice to get used to. I haven't spent a lot of time in the 7-speed manual, and this is weird. Like, this is such a strange phenomenon to get used to.
Is it like right and down?
No, it's right and up.
Oh, right, yeah.
All the way right and up. And so you can't get into 7th unless you're in 5th or 6th beforehand. And the car is already doing at insane speeds by like the end of 3rd gear. So, like, I always found it funny that I had to, like, shift a couple of times to get it into the high gear.
Is it necessary?
It just, you know what? I don't think it's necessary, but at the same time, this is what an enthusiast wants. They want to change gears all the time, and this is such a good manual transmission that I'm totally okay with this. And especially when it does the rev matching for you, you feel like a pro every time. I'm telling you, something that I didn't realize was how much fun 911s can be. I've driven a bunch of different 911s, and I feel like over the years I've gotten really familiar with them, and they're I don't want to call them boring. They're familiar. This Carrera T did not feel like that. It felt fun. It felt engaging. It felt a little less wild than the Carrera S's and the turbos that you can get. Because it was less powerful and a shift-it-yourself vehicle, it just felt more playful in a way that I did not expect a 911 to be. In fact, I said that the Boxster was seriously fast.
Yeah.
This is like playfully fun. It's a different vibe than I would have expected. And I usually thought the smaller car would be the funner car.
I actually had a really similar experience with the Golf R, which normally is kind of a boring car around
Right.
town. But when you get it with a manual, it's way more playful.
Oh, it
You
changes the personality
It changes
entirely.
the personality completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really was impressed with it. I don't know how else to add that. I mean, it is a little expensive. It's a kind of strange vehicle. I mean, if you want a faster, more powerful car, you're going to get a Carrera S, no problem, or a 4S. That's going to be a blast
Right.
to drive. But if you want something that really like feels like you're a part of the process and that the car feels really intuitive and engaging, that Carrera T is the ultimate in the 911 range. I think that's somewhat affordable. I mean, you could probably go into like GT2 and GT3
Well, yeah,
territory.
you can figure anything
But
and
those
you'll
are-
chart. Yeah,
those
you
are
can get those
insanely
numbers up
expensive.
there.
So I was impressed with that.
I remember picking it up and I was so hyped about it. I was like running around taking pictures. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, yellow seatbelt. Oh my god, it's a manual.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you were just like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'll be honest, the first impression I had is I got in it and noticed there's no leather on the seats. It had a very unique cloth material on the
Weight
seats.
savings, right?
Yes, and it had no handles. It had these straps instead, which is kind of weird to think in a $100,000 car that handles are heavier than straps, and I don't know what is more appropriate for someone. I don't understand value at that range of at that price tag, right?
Right.
Like there is no value at that price tag.
Because they could have cut the weight even more
Somewhere
had they
else.
not offered air conditioning and radios
Yeah.
and all that.
Yep. And so I think that was really funny, and I will admit it's a really funny car. It's hilarious to drive around in. And you know, it was that bright yellow. It had black accents. It had a stripe on the side that
So
said
good.
Carrera T, and it was loud. It popped and burbled everywhere, and people loved it. And that's something that I wasn't expecting in a 911 either, right? You see some
Because
you
they're
see,
so ubiquitous.
Yeah. And then like the last generation one and the new generation one, you know, they look somewhat the same, and you've got that minor leap. But for whatever reason, people saw this and were like, "That guy's got it." And I was like,
And
"Yeah."
you were just like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. But you know, you can see kids, you know, going, "Oh, look at how yellow that is," you know, and they can see it and they can hear it, and that's terrifying, right? Like, it's a wild car. I was very happy with it. And it's something that I don't usually say with a 911. Usually say, yeah, it's pretty fast, it's fun, it's good, it's built well. But with this, it adds this joy that I think we didn't know that Porsche can still deliver.
That's awesome. So even compared to the Boxster GTS you drove a couple weeks ago, you would say this
Yeah.
is more fun.
Absolutely, and I think the engine has a lot to do with that. This has the 3-liter flat six, and that one had the new 2.5 turbo, and that one sounds really, it sounds really awkward, and this sounds good.
Awesome.
What else do we got coming up?
Well, I have something not as exciting as a 911T. It is the new Jeep Cherokee.
What do you mean not as exciting? The Jeep, first of all, we have a ton of Jeep fans who are on our AutoGuide
Yes.
YouTube channel, AutoGuide website.
But they're all Wrangler folk.
Wrangler and Grand Cherokee folk,
Yeah,
as I've
true.
noticed in our comparisons
That's
recently.
true. So this new Jeep Cherokee was refreshed for 2019. And when it came out at the auto show, I was really happy because they changed the front end and the rear end. And so in my opinion, I think it looks a lot less ugly than it used to look.
Okay.
So before it had these like really awful slanty, squinty headlights that
Yeah.
sat like up here, like right up on the bonnet. And this like weird grill that was jutted out and pointy, so it looked like a beak.
Yes, it was. I remember that. It was always an awkward thing to look at. And I thought we had maybe become accustomed to it over the years, but I guess they're changing that.
No, so they changed it, and it looks a lot better now. So basically the whole front end and the rear end are new. The grille is more upright, less pointy. It's a bit more in your face, looks a bit more aggressive, which is nice. And the headlights are new, so they're a little bit wider.
Yeah, they look a little bit more like the rest of the Jeep.
Yeah, and so
lineup.
now it looks more in line with the rest of the lineup, and it looks a lot less awkward. And so I mean, like the Cherokee never had a problem with sales to begin with, but I think this new look will help them sell even more.
I don't think that's the only thing that is a significant upgrade here. They got a new engine, didn't they?
Yeah, so they got a new turbo 2-liter 4-cylinder. And it has 270 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, which is actually, it makes it the most powerful engine in its lineup. And even that is unique because it's the only crossover in the market that has 3 engine choices.
Wow, yeah.
Most of them will have 1, some of them have 2, but none of them have 3.
That's pretty cool.
And so like there's a carryover 2.4 liter like naturally aspirated, the Tiger Shark one.
Yeah.
And then there's still the
I wouldn't get that one.
It's not a good engine at all. It is slow AF. And they still have the V6, the 3.2 liter V6, which is less powerful than the new 2-liter turbo.
So this is the top end.
That's the one that the Trailhawk gets.
The 2-liter turbo. Oh, really? You can't get the Trailhawk with the 2-liter turbo?
I don't think so. I think it
Interesting.
only comes with the V6.
So like this competes with other crossovers that are really popular, like the Escape, the RAV4, the CR-V. What else? The CX-5. I just said a bunch of letters. I hope I got some.
Yeah, I think in there was this crossover that probably competes with this one.
And does it keep up with them?
So yes and no. So my whole thing about Jeep is that like I did not like the driving dynamics of this Cherokee at all. Mind you, I did not take it off-road, which is what I think Jeep imagines a lot of people will do with their products, even if it's not a Wrangler.
Okay.
And so in general, the driving dynamics were just very squishy. It was very soft. The suspension was super soft, which means it was comfortable over rough roads, but it leaned a lot in the corners. The steering was really sloppy, so there's a big dead zone in the middle.
Okay.
And then at the end of each lock, when you think it's done, it wiggles some more, which is really unnerving, right? And the other thing, it was just very soft, and I did not like driving it on the road. But these qualities that give it poor on-road driving dynamics are the things that'll make it off-road better. So the sloppy steering when you're driving over rocks and stuff, the rocks aren't going to whip it out of your hand. Right? And so it's stuff like that.
Okay.
But my thing with the Cherokee is that like if you're going to go off-roading, you're going to get the Trailhawk or you're just going to get a Wrangler.
Yeah.
And so any of the soft off-roading, like up to your cottage or like the gravel road up the hill,
It doesn't need you to be that soft.
it doesn't
and
need you to be that soft because a CR-V could do that no problem. Right?
Or a Forester, yeah.
Or a Forester.
That's a big deal because we picked our utility vehicle of the year. It was the Mazda CX-5, and it was a very good feeling car on the road.
Right.
That's where that's where the majority of people drive, and it had a capable all-wheel drive system to handle off-road like snow or mud or whatever. So this is, it's supposed to be better off-road, but to me, I've done this with the Compass. The Compass has an all-wheel drive system just like that. It had a weaker engine, that 2.4 liter engine.
Tiger Shark.
But without the right tires, it still ended up being a bit of a headache in some situations. So you need to get that.
If you want to off-road, you're going to get bigger tires. You're going to get a different model entirely, and so I don't know if people care that much about driving dynamics, but it was bad enough where it was like actually not enjoyable. And it was actually kind of a problem because it made it very hard to drive smoothly. Like your inputs, because it is pretty unresponsive in terms of like your pedal feel and your steering is just not very responsive. And so it made it harder to drive smoothly.
I'm interested to hear. So there's like, unless you drove that Trailhawk, what is the best part of this car? Usually, FCA's interiors can be pretty decent sometimes.
This one was only okay. I counted maybe like 7 or 8 different colored, textured trim pieces inside, so it just looked really not incohesive.
Okay.
And so it looked like, they just picked out of a parts bin.
Okay.
If they just made it a little bit more cohesive in materials or textures, it would have helped things out.
Okay. What about technology? There's usually a buttload of technology in these things.
Yeah, so Uconnect is still like the best infotainment system out there in its segment, I think at least.
Yeah, I think so.
It just works really well. Everything was fast, responsive. The menus are easy and user-friendly. I just really like using that system. Something weird did happen to me though. The reverse camera randomly stopped working and then started working again after I drove it a couple more times.
I've had weird things happen in FCA vehicles, especially with that Uconnect system, and I think maybe it was with
so
Sebastien
many people.
Once. And I think I've mentioned this on the Compass review. The screen will just go completely dark, but my reverse camera still worked, which is the opposite of your situation.
So weird. And even when Sam had the Challenger GT, his Uconnect system would get all like like there would be pixelated lines all over it.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
and it was
Okay.
super weird. And then our friend Chad Kirchner said his the fuel filler door just kept randomly popping open on him for no reason. And so it's these little things that make it hard to have a lot of confidence in FCA's build quality and tech.
They
And
do live up to the stereotype quite a bit.
And I wish it would stop happening, because
I know.
it's sad when stuff like this happens, because they're so close. Because we're like, oh, Uconnect is such a great system, it's so functional, but then it breaks all the time.
And then it breaks, and we're like, well, so much for that.
Yeah, so that's that.
I also find sometimes these vehicles, Jeep's vehicles, can command a pretty hefty price tag.
Yes, this one, the one that I had, I'm not sure about the American price, but in Canada it was like $47,000.
That's way too much.
Which is like, I could buy an Audi A4 for that price. Not that they're competitors, but like just to put that price into perspective.
Just thinking of the other cars that you can get for that price. You can get a really good Stinger.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
And this one didn't even have stuff like adaptive cruise control or anything like that. So the value part also isn't there as much as some of its competitors. I think if people are getting this car, they want the brands. They want a Jeep.
And if they want the brand, they want the Trailhawk.
Yeah.
Like, that's the real representation of that.
Yes.
But then if you want to go off-road, you can just get a Wrangler.
Yes.
So Jeep, we don't know what your deal is. This car is real confusing. It's not the best in its segment. It's not the worst.
It's
in its
not the
segment.
worst.
Thankfully, we have, I don't know, like Mitsubishi to thank for that.
It's just, it ends up being quite
Sorry,
average
Mitsubishi.
all around. But yeah, I didn't love it, to be
It
honest.
just doesn't stand up to the benchmark of other vehicles that are much more popular, much better value,
Yes.
and much more capable on-road and off-road.
And they don't have weird technology issues
Right.
that screw you up.
All right, what else do we got coming?
Sebastien had a sweet
Sebastien?
trip.
I was very excited to be flown down to San Francisco and get to live my childhood dream of being Steve McQueen. And so I drove the Mustang Bullitt across the Golden Gate Bridge. We did the whole thing. We drove through San Francisco.
Did you
and
wear
it was-
driving gloves?
No, I didn't, because those are awful, and I refuse to wear driving gloves. Because anytime you see somebody come out of anywhere out of a car with driving gloves, you're like, oh, you're a really big nerd, aren't you?
Oh,
It's
hold
true.
up. No, I've gotta say something.
Come on.
My mom wears driving gloves.
Your mom's a super big nerd.
No, it's what it is.
It's for
is
the
that
sun.
It's no, her hands sweat and her steering wheel is wood, so she loses grip on it, and
What's your mom driving?
a Lexus RX 400H.
Oh, okay.
And she has got a wood steering wheel, and she loses her grip on it, so she uses the gloves that help her in that situation.
Well,
so stop
with all
hating.
due respect
Stop
to your
dissing
mother,
Sammy's mom.
Yeah,
who I'm sure is
jeez.
lovely and who I'm sure looks really cool with the driving gloves. Anyway, but the Bullitt was super duper cool. It's very, very, very cool. It comes in two colors. It comes in your foresty green. It's not
The best color.
it's the such a good color. And it also comes in black, which is a little bit weird. And you're giving me a look right now, which
Why?
I had the same look when I heard about this. But then when you see it, it looks really cool.
Is that the first time a Bullitt model of the Mustang has been offered in a different color?
No, there was one that was offered in blue, which was worse.
That's so weird. That
was a
doesn't that
bad
defeat
decision.
the whole purpose?
Yes, it does. But
I love the look of this new one, though.
the new
It
one looks
so
really
good.
great. Yeah, it does. And so there are bumper changes, there are fascia changes front and back.
It's really subtle, those changes.
It's really subtle,
It still looks aggressive.
it looks aggressive and it looks different enough that you notice that it's a Bullitt even when it's in black. So I would say that is a reason not to hate it. And somebody's going to get a black GT, black on black on black, and then that person could get it with whatever those American racing rims too, if they wanted that. So,
Okay.
I think that's why it happens. And I think they said that they figured the take rate would be pretty small, but it kind of didn't matter because it's just a paint
Right.
color. So yeah, but it only comes in manual, which I feel is a
Whoop,
brave decision from Ford, but an awesome decision. 'Cause
Right.
Such a good manual. It comes with automatic revving downshifts as well, which
Okay.
is cool. It does make you feel like a hero. And then the nice thing is, it doesn't matter what speed you're going. When you shift down, when it feels the shifter go down,
Yeah.
it'll give you a blip of throttle. So you can sort of just
Oh.
you can just be going up and down with the thing
Just
in,
for fun.
Just for fun. If you're in a tunnel, which I may have done, you just go third gear, fourth gear, third gear, fourth gear, and it's such a blast. And it's also got, like the movie Bullitt, it's had some work done to the top end. So it's got a unique airbox. It's got the GT350's air intake. It's got bigger throttle bodies.
Cool.
And so it gives it a unique sound, and it gives it about 20 more horsepower.
Cool. So I have a question to ask you.
Yes.
If somebody has never seen Bullitt
Yes.
and doesn't have any of like weird attachments to nostalgia, because like I've never seen Bullitt. I know what it is.
What are you doing?
And I get it. I understand its significance in car culture, but would I care about the Bullitt if I have never seen the movie? Would I like driving it?
So I think it looks cool enough that it is on its own just kind of like funky and cool and
Okay.
awesome. I did see some people arguing that it's better than nostalgia. I think the sound is different enough. You notice the difference in sound between it and the GT.
That's pretty cool.
It's got 20 more horsepower, which is always nice. It's not a ridiculous amount of horsepower where you can feel it all the time, but it's just the argument that they made was that you get more. You get a flatter horsepower band throughout the rev range, so you feel it.
Because
You
it's
can
not like the
hang on
Mustang
to.
GT was slow in any way. Like
Exactly.
It needed more horsepower.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the thing about your question is that the Mustang GT is a really good car anyway.
Yeah.
So,
But
like,
this is it, but better.
this
It
is
looks cooler.
a little bit better. So I would say that yes, it does. It's enough of a difference to warrant it being cool, even if you haven't seen the movie.
Right.
But you will be asked enough questions, and you will have to answer questions from people like pushing their head into your
Right.
window.
So I'll
being
have
like,
to study before I
yeah,
drive
exactly.
it.
They'll
yeah.
be like, "Hey, did you watch Steve McQueen? Did you?"
I also do
The
love
Getaway was a better movie.
the cue ball shifter. I think
Yeah.
it's super cool.
The cue-ball shifter
So
is super
retro.
cool. Yeah, it's very cool.
There's a lot to like though. Like the last generation Mustang Bullitt was actually a bit of a sleeper. And if you didn't know that you were looking at it, you'd think that was just a really neat green Mustang.
Yeah.
This a little bit more special in the way that it's designed.
Yeah.
It has those really cool design cues on the the cue ball shifter and that Bullitt logo on the rear trunk, which is pretty nice. It's right there.
Like that.
Oh, nice.
And the fact that it's manual only makes it feel like a really special enthusiast. It's for the people in the know.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a cool feeling to have, right?
It
I
is a
love
very cool
that.
feeling. And it's a feeling that you got from the people who built it. I talked to the head engineer for Mustang, and he was so excited about it the whole time. Like you could tell he's like, look at my car, look at what I did.
Oh,
I'm really
that's so
excited about
nice.
this. So it was really cool. And the people who designed this, they told me, put it up on top of their Christmas tree at their Christmas party before they announced the Bullitt because they were so excited. And he was like, no, we got to take it down. We got to take it down
Like the
before somebody
media's
sees
gonna
it.
see this.
Yeah, but everybody was really excited to take part in this project. So I think that in itself is proof that the car they're not just cashing in.
That's awesome to know because I feel like a lot of times when automakers do these special edition cars, they just kind of phone it in
Right.
and like give it a new color and then call
Graphics
it a day.
package,
like
yeah.
so many of those blackout packages.
Yeah.
Or like
Midnight edition,
Midnight edition.
Dawn edition,
Yeah, they're
after 6 o'clock edition, Starlight edition,
that's the
There's
minty
so
green.
many.
Moon edition.
And those are phoned in and like whatever. If you want that, then that's fine. But like this feels
Special.
special. Everybody in the project was all about it.
Cool.
They brought us out. They got VW to bring a Beetle to the event so that they could drive around because in the movie you drive by the Bullitt and the Charger drive by a Beetle like 4 or 5 times. Like they
That's
were
attention to detail.
they were into it, which is it's fun. It's nice that they did that.
Very cool.
And
I've got
then
one. Yes,
I was going to say, while I was in San Francisco, you were
I was chasing you.
racing towards me.
I was on a little bit of a road trip with the brand new 2019 Mazda MX-5. And we started in San Luis Obispo, which was in California, and we drove to Monterey, and then from Monterey to San Francisco. I just missed you by, I think, a day, which is
You were
a
going too
shame.
slowly.
Well,
You didn't have 480
can you
horsepower.
blame me? I've got an MX-5. But there's some cool things that are going on with the 2019 MX-5. And for 29 years, the MX-5 has pretty much been like the same idea, the same mindset of being this really affordable, lightweight, modest power vehicle. Like it's been doing that for so long. And just I think last year or the year before last, they sold their millionth MX-5, which means they've got a long way to go to reach the number of Mustangs that have been sold. Which
10
is
million.
10 million. That's
Today.
wild.
Yeah.
But I can't say that the MX-5 is a bad car. Every time you get in an MX-5, you have so much fun with it. And it's not that it's stiff or fast or filled with features. It's just this car that seems like it's built around you
It's
in
so
every
pure.
single way. Yeah. And so this year they've given it more power. 26 more horsepower, which is more than the upgrade from the Mustang GT to the Bullitt.
And is a considerably larger percentage of the power, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal.
They did that by a couple of really important changes in the engine, but they've also raised the red line from 6,000 to 7,000 RPM, I believe. And it's pretty impressive how they've been able to do that. But the more important part of that package is that you feel like at least 10 more torque down low early on. So the car feels like it feels beefier in a way at low speeds, which is pretty cool because usually you have to wring out an MX-5. And that increased red line means that you don't have to downshift, you don't have to upshift before you reach a corner to downshift again. You know what I mean?
Right.
MX-5s, sometimes you go into a corner and you just hit the limiter and you're like, I have to go into third before I'm just going to hit the brakes and drop down to second anyways. And now you can carry more speed all throughout your cornering activities, which is what you end up doing in an MX-5 a lot. So let's talk about what they did to make it more powerful. They gave it that new higher red line. Yeah. Larger throttle body, intake port, and intake valves. They've changed the exhaust ports and exhaust valves. They've got a high flow manifold, exhaust manifold, and a new muffler. They've got a longer lift duration. They've also made parts of the engine lighter. I believe the pistons are lighter.
It's a lot of work.
They've made a better, more balanced crankshaft. They've added a dual mass flywheel, which actually improves the smoothness of the engine and makes it feel a little less coarse and a little less rough around the edges. And they've managed to do this, especially with that dual mass flywheel, they've managed to make it smoother and quieter too, which is pretty important, especially in a convertible, because sometimes you don't realize you hear everything when you're in a convertible like that.
Here's my question, though.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that the thing about the Miata was that it had a certain amount of horsepower, and Mazda didn't want to add any more, because when you start doing that, you start falling down a hill, or snowballing into more and more weight. Like, is this okay with the more power?
So apparently what I understood from the folks at Mazda USA is that they wanted more power from the get-go. The engine that we were apparently supposed to get, or were given, it was going to be that global one, that 1.5 liter engine, which makes a limited amount of horsepower. So apparently the US folks shoehorned that 2 liter that we got last year, but it wasn't really finished in the way that they want it to be. It was very similar to what we got in other Mazda vehicles. So now they've been able to work with that engine, and they've been able to extract this much more horsepower and torque for it, which I think is pretty important. Also, because Sebastien has a very strong, for the viewers out there, Sebastien has a really weird driving position in which
he's so far back.
And I think he's been in an MX-5 and he's probably said, this thing doesn't fit me. They've added something just for you, Sebastien.
Just for me?
Yes. For the first time in MX-5 history, they've added a telescoping steering wheel.
It's worth whatever it weighs.
0.48 of a pound. Which
never mind, it's too much. It weighs too much.
That's almost half a pound.
Right. And
that's just like a big lunch.
I know, exactly. Don't go to McDonald's.
And I just think that they've managed to refine the fourth generation MX-5 in a way. They've given it more power. I think people are going to like it. There's two ways to get an MX-5, soft top or the hard top RF, which is kind of like a Targa. We've only got pricing for the RF, which tops out at around $37,000, which is a load of money.
That's a lot for a Miata.
It's so much.
Yeah.
And personally, I think I would take the drop top, the regular soft top, every time, because when you have the hard top, you have this weird piece of the body right behind you, and it doesn't quite feel like a convertible. Every time you look, you see this part of the car, and it's just not the same. And I think if you're getting an MX-5, you need the drop top experience, and you have that whole open world kind of feel.
I disagree. I would get the RF simply because I like the way it looks. And they keep promising me that it's not that much heavier.
It does look pretty good, and there's a new model which actually has a black painted roof, a new package, and it looks pretty sharp.
Cool.
But it also furthers that idea of it just looking like a Targa top.
Okay, so just going back to the engine for a little bit, people are constantly making the complaint and like, oh, the Miata is too slow. And now that it has more power, do you think that it is more fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how anyone can call this car slow. The gear changes, especially the gearing in this vehicle is perfect. it feels fast, and it feels faster than it has any right to be just because of that gearing. And now that it has a higher redline and more power, you get to that speed quicker as well. So I think that you're going to be enjoying the MX-5. Now, it's just like the same problem that I have with the 86. Some people say it's slow. It's slow in certain situations. These aren't drag strip cars. They're not high muscle vehicles like the Mustangs or some of the turbocharged hot hatches out there. These are made to carve up corners and to make you want to take the long way home. And you'll enjoy that experience, even if it takes you longer than you would in a heavier vehicle that you've got to wrangle around.
Yeah, but it's not like you'd be going ham every time you drive home if you had a Mustang. Well, maybe Mustang drivers do, and then they crash into stuff.
And then they don't make it home.
Yeah, but I feel like the whole point of the MX-5 is that it is engaging.
Yeah, it's engaging. It wants you to drive it like as much as you can. And that's it feels good when you can utilize the car to its full potential whenever you want to.
And now it has a backup camera.
And now it has a backup camera, yes, which is pretty handy, especially in the RF model. I will add that I think I said this. More people are picking up RFs. Apparently, 2/3 of all MX-5s being sold now are RF models.
So I'm in the majority.
You are, yeah. I didn't say that.
You seemed offended.
No, I just think that if you're going to get an MX-5, you should get the soft top because it feels more open and comfortable. It feels like a convertible. Additionally, as all three of us have manual transmission cars at home, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, about 60% of MX-5s are sold with manuals, which is pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so I was happy with it. I think the RF is a little too expensive, but that's okay. You can still get the soft top model. I also want to point out this RF is actually lighter than the last generation soft top.
That one was a porker.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
That car also made more power, not than the first generation of this new generation car. I can't explain that better. But when the fourth generation came out, it came with 155 horsepower. The NC, the third generation, had 167, I think.
But it was a lot heavier.
But it was a bit heavier as well.
Cool.
So that's pretty cool. We had 3 sports cars to talk about and 1 crossover. I think the sports cars won this time around. We had a lot of good times in those things. What?
Good times in sports cars.
Good times in sports cars.
We need more of those.
Who would have guessed, right? And I think that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank everyone out there for listening. If you want to hear our last episodes or stay up to date with the latest episodes, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast client. We're there on Google Play Music and Google Podcasts and also Apple iTunes. And if you do listen to us on Apple iTunes, be sure to rate and review us. We'll even read out some of those reviews that we get, assuming they're not too harsh and hurt our feelings because we're very sensitive up here on camera. I wanted to say thanks again for watching and listening. Also, be sure to tune in every other Friday. That's when we have our episodes of the AutoGuide Show. And why not go to our website, AutoGuide.com, and take a look at the latest reviews, features, news, comparisons, and, I don't know, top 10 lists too.
We do a lot of those.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.